Intensity, Chapter 4. Intensity. He believes in living with intensity. Sitting at the steering wheel, he closes his eyes and massages the back of his neck. He isn't trying to get rid of the pain. It came on its own, and it will leave him naturally in time. He never takes Tylenol and other crap like that. What he's trying to do is enjoy the pain as fully as possible. With his fingertips, he finds an especially sore spot just to the left of the third cervical vertebra, and he presses on it until the pain causes faint sprays of twinkly white and gray lights in the blackness behind his eyelids, like distant fireworks in a world without color. Very nice. Pain is merely a part of life. By embracing it, one can find surprising satisfaction in suffering. More important, getting in touch with his own pain makes it easier for him to take pleasure in the pain of others. 2 vertebrae farther down, he locates an even more sensitive point of inflamed tendon or muscle. A wonderful little button buried in the flesh, which, when pressed, causes pain to shoot all the way across his shoulder and down his trapezius. At first, he works the spot with a lover's tender touch, groaning softly. Then he attacks it vigorously until the sweet agony makes him suck air between his clenched teeth. Intensity. He does not expect to live forever. His time in this body is finite and precious, and therefore must not be wasted. He does not believe in reincarnation or in any of the standard promises of an afterlife that are sold by the world's great religions, although at times he senses that he is approaching a revelation of tremendous importance. He is willing to contemplate the possibility that the immortal soul exists, and that his own spirit may one day be exalted. But if he is to undergo an apotheosis, it will be brought about by his own bold actions, not by divine grace. If he in fact becomes a god, the transformation will occur because he has already chosen to live like a god, without fear, without remorse, without limits, with all his senses fiercely sharpened. Anyone can smell a rose and enjoy the scent, but he has long been training himself to feel the destruction of its beauty when he crushes a flower in his fist. If he were to have a rose now, and if he were to chew the petals, he would be able to taste not merely the rose itself, but the redness of it. Likewise, he could taste the yellowness of buttercups, the blue of hyacinths. He could taste the bee that had crawled across the blossom on its eternal buzzing task of pollination, the soil out of which the flower had grown, and the wind that had caressed it through the summer of its growing. He had never met anyone who can understand the intensity with which he experiences the world, or the greater intensity for which he strives. With his help, perhaps Ariel will understand one day. Now, of course, she is too immature to achieve the insight. One last squeeze of his neck, the pain, he sighs. From the co-pilot's seat, he picks up a folded raincoat. No rain is yet falling, but he needs to cover his blood-spattered clothing before going inside. He could have changed into clean clothes prior to leaving the Templeton house, but he enjoys wearing these. The patina excites him. He washed his hands in the kitchen sink at the Templeton house, though he would have preferred to leave them stained too. While he can conceal his clothes under a raincoat, hiding his hands is not as easy. He never wears gloves. To do so would be to concede that he fears apprehension, which he does not. Although his fingerprints are on file with federal and state agencies, the prints he leaves at the scene will never match those that bear his name in the records. Like the rest of the world, police organizations are hell-bent on computerization. By now, most fingerprint image reference banks are in the form of digitized data to facilitate high-speed scanning and processing. Even more easily than hard files, electronic files can be manipulated because the work can be done at a great distance. There's no need to burglarize highly secure facilities, when instead he can be a ghost haunting their machines from across a continent. Because of his intelligence, talents, and connections, he's been able to meddle with the data. Wearing gloves, even thin surgical latex gloves, would be an intolerable barrier to sensation. He likes to let his hand glide lightly over the fine golden hairs on a woman's thigh, take time to appreciate the texture of pebbled goose flesh against his palm, to relish the fierce heat of skin, and then, after, the warmth all fading. When he kills, he finds it absolutely essential to feel the wetness. The prints under his name in the various files are in fact those of a young Marine named Bernard Patain, who died tragically during training maneuvers at Camp Pendleton many years ago. And the prints that he leaves at the scene, often etched in blood, cannot be matched to any on file with the military, the FBI, the Department of Motor Vehicles, or anywhere else. He finishes buttoning the raincoat, turns up the collar, and looks at his hands. Stains under 3 fingernails. It might be grease or soil. No one will be suspicious of it. He himself can smell the blood on his clothes, even through the black nylon raincoat and insulated liner, but others are not sufficiently sensitive to detect it. Staring at the residue under his nails, however, he can hear the screams again. That lovely music in the night, the Templeton house as reverberant as a concert hall, and no one to hear except him and the deaf vineyards. If he is ever caught in the act, the authorities will print him again, discover his deception with the computers, and eventually link him to a long list of unsolved murders. But he isn't concerned about that. He'll never be taken alive, never be put on trial. Whatever they learn about his activities after his death will only add to the glory of his name. He is Edgeler Foreman Vess. From the letters of his name, one can extract a long list of power words: God, fear, demon, save, rage, anger, dragon, forge, seed, semen, free, and others. Also words with a mystical quality: dream, vessel, lore, forever, marvel. Sometimes the last thing that he whispers to a victim is a sentence composed from this list of words. One that he especially likes and uses often is, God fears me. Anyway, all questions of fingerprints and other evidence are moot because he will never be caught. He is 33 years old. He has been enjoying himself in this fashion for a long time, and he has never had a close call. Now he takes the pistol out of the open console between the pilot's and co-pilot's chairs, a Heckler & Koch P7. Earlier he had reloaded the 13-round magazine. Now he unscrews the sound suppressor because he has no plans to visit other houses this night. Besides, the baffles are probably damaged from the shots he has fired, diminishing both the effect of the silencer and the accuracy of the weapon. Occasionally he daydreams about what it would be like if the impossible happened, if he were interrupted at play and surrounded by a SWAT team. With his experience and knowledge, the ensuing showdown would be thrillingly intense. If there is a single secret behind the success of Edgeler Vess, it is his belief that no twist of fate is either good or bad, that no experience is qualitatively better than another. Winning $20 million in the lottery is no more to be desired than being trapped by a SWAT team, and a shootout with the authorities is no more to be dreaded than winning all that money. The value of any experience isn't in its positive or negative effect on his life, but in the sheer luminous power of it, the vividness, the ferocity, the amount and degree of pure sensation that it provides, intensity. Vess puts the sound suppressor in the console between the seats. He drops the pistol into the right-hand pocket of his raincoat. He is not expecting trouble. Nevertheless, he goes nowhere unarmed. One can never be too careful. Besides, opportunities often arise unexpectedly. In the driver's seat again, he takes the keys from the ignition and checks if the brake is firmly set. He opens the door and gets out of the motorhome. All 8 gasoline pumps are self-service. He's parked at the outer of the 2 service islands. He needs to go to the cashier in the associated convenience store to pay in advance and to identify the pump that he'll be using so it can be turned on. The night breathes. At higher altitudes, a strong gale drives masses of clouds out of the northwest toward the southeast. Here at ground level, a lesser exhalation of cold wind huffs between the pumps, whistles alongside the motorhome, and flaps the raincoat aside against Vess's legs. The convenience store, buff brick below, white aluminum siding above, big windows full of merchandise, stands in front of rising hills that are covered with huge evergreens. The winds sough, S-O-U-G-H-S, through their branches with a hollow, ancient, lonely voice. Out on Highway 101, there's little traffic at this hour. When a truck passes, it cleaves the wind with a cry that seems strangely Jurassic. A Pontiac with Washington state license plates is parked at the inner service island under the yellow sodium vapor lamps. Other than the motorhome, it is the only vehicle in sight. A bumper sticker on the back announces that electricians know how to plug it in. On the roof of the building, positioned for maximum visibility from 101, is a red neon sign that announces open 24 hours. Red is the quality of the sound each passing truck makes out there on the highway. In the glow, his hands look as if he never washed them. As Vess approaches the entrance, the glass door swings open and a man comes out, carrying a family-sized bag of potato chips and a 6-pack of Coke in cans. He's a chubby guy with long sideburns and a walrus mustache. Gesturing at the sky, he says, "Storm's coming," as he hurries past Vess. "Good," Vess says. He likes storms. He enjoys driving in them. The more torrential the rain, the better, with lightning flashing and trees cracking in the wind and pavement as slick as ice. The guy with the walrus mustache goes to the Pontiac. Vess enters the convenience store, wondering what an electrician from Washington is doing on the road in Northern California at this ungodly hour of the night. He's fascinated by the way in which lives connect briefly, with a potential for drama that is sometimes fulfilled, sometimes not. A man stops for gasoline, lingers to buy potato chips and Coke, makes a comment on the weather to a stranger, and continues on his journey. The stranger could as easily follow the man to the car and blow his brains out. There would be risks for the shooter, but not serious risks. It could be managed with surprising discretion. The man's survival is either full of mysterious meaning or utterly meaningless. Vess is unable to decide which. If fate doesn't actually exist, it ought to. The small store is warm, clean, and brightly lighted. 3 narrow aisles extend to the left of the door, offering the usual roadside merchandise. Every imaginable snack food, the basic patent medicines, magazines, paperback books, postcards, novelty items designed to hang from rearview mirrors, and selected canned goods that sell to campers and to people like Vess who travel in homes on wheels. Along the back wall are tall coolers full of beer and soft drinks, as well as a couple of freezers containing ice cream treats. To the right of the door is the service counter that separates the 2 cashier station and the clerical area from the public part of the store. 2 employees are on duty, both men. These days no one works alone in such places at night, and with good reason. The guy at the cash register is a redhead in his 30s with freckles and a 2-inch diameter birthmark as pink as uncooked salmon on his pale forehead. The mark is uncannily like the image of a fetus curled in a womb, as if a gestating twin had died early in the mother's pregnancy and left its fossilized image on the surviving brother's brow. The red-headed cashier is reading a paper book. He looks up at Vess, and his eyes are as gray as ashes, but clear and piercing. "What can I do for you, sir?" "I'm at Pump 7, Vess says. The radio is tuned to a country station. Alan Jackson sings about midnight in Montgomery, the wind, a whippoorwill, a lonesome chill, and the ghost of Hank Williams. "How you want to pay?" asks the cashier. "If I put any more on the credit cards, the Bank of America is going to send someone around to break my legs," says Vess, and he slaps down a $100 bill. "Figure I'll need about $60 worth." The combination of the song, the birthmark, and the cashier's haunting gray eyes generates in Vess an eerie sense of expectancy. Something exceptional is about to happen. "Paying off Christmas like the rest of us, huh?" says the cashier as he rings up the sale. "Hell, I'll still be paying off Christmas next Christmas." The second clerk sits on a stool further along the counter. He's not at a cash register, but is laboring on the bookkeeping or checking inventory sheets, anyway doing some kind of paperwork. Vess has not previously looked directly at the second man, and now he discovers that this is the exceptional thing he felt looming. "Storm coming," he says to the second clerk. The man looks up from the paper spread on the counter. He's in his 20s, at least half Asian, and strikingly handsome. No, more than handsome. Jet black hair, golden complexion, eyes as liquid as oil and as deep as wells. There's a gentle quality to his good looks that almost gives him an effeminate aspect, but not quite. Ariel would love him, he's just her type. Might be cold enough for snow in some of the mountain passes, says the Asian, if you're going that way. He has a pleasant, almost musical voice that would charm Ariel. He is really quite breathtaking. To the cashier who's counting out change, Beth says, just hold on to that. I need a supply of munchies, too. I'll be back as soon as I fill up the tank. He leaves quickly, afraid that they might sense his excitement and become alarmed. Although he's been in the store no more than a minute, the night seems markedly colder than it was when he went inside. Invigorating. He catches the fragrance of pine trees and spruce, even fir from far to the north. Inhales the sweet greenness of the heavily timbered hills behind him. Detects the crisp scent of oncoming rain, smells the ozone of lightning bolts not yet hurled. Breathes in the pungent fear of small animals that already quake in the fields and forests in anticipation of the storm. After she was certain that he had left the motorhome, China crept forward through the vehicle, holding the butcher knife in front of her. The windows in the dining area and the lounge were curtained, so she was not able to see what lay outside. At the front, however, the windshield revealed that they had stopped at a service station. She had no idea where the killer was. He had left no more than a minute earlier. He might be outside, within a few feet of the door. She hadn't heard him removing the gas cap or jacking the pump nozzle into the tank, but from the way they were parked, fuel was evidently taken on board from the starboard side, so that was most likely where he would be. Afraid to proceed without knowing his exact whereabouts, but even more afraid to remain in the motorhome, she slipped into the driver's seat. The headlights were off and the instrument panel was dark, but there was enough backglow from the dining nook lamp to make her supremely visible from outside. At the next island, a Pontiac pulled away from the pumps. Its red taillight swiftly dwindled. As far as she could see, the motorhome was now the only vehicle at the station. The keys weren't in the ignition. She wouldn't have tried to drive off anyway. That had been an option back in the vineyard when there had been no help nearby. Here there must be employees, and whoever pulled off the highway next. She cracked the door, wincing at the hard sound, jumped out and stumbled when she hit the ground. The butcher knife popped from her hand as if greased, clattered against the pavement and spun away. Certain that she had drawn the killer's attention and that he was already bearing down on her, China scrambled to her feet. She spun left, then right, with her hands out in front of her in pathetic defense. But the eater of spiders was nowhere to be seen on the brightly lighted blacktop. She pressed the door shut, searched the surrounding pavement for the knife, couldn't immediately spot it, and froze when a man came out of the station about 50 or 60 feet away. He was wearing a long coat, so at first China was sure that he couldn't be the killer, but then immediately she recalled the inexplicable rustling of fabric to which she had listened before he had left the motorhome, and she knew. The only place to hide was behind one of the pumps at the next service island, but that was 30 feet away, between her and the store with a lot of red exposed pavement to cross. Besides, he was approaching the same island from the other side, and he would reach it first, catching her in the open. If she tried to get around the motorhome, he would spot her and wonder where she had come from. His psychosis probably included a measure of paranoia, and he would assume that she had been in his vehicle. He would pursue her relentlessly. Instead, even as she saw him leaving the store, China dropped flat to the pavement. Counting on the obstructing pumps at the first island to mask any movement close to the ground, she crawled on her belly under the motorhome. The killer didn't cry out, didn't pick up his pace. He hadn't seen her. From her hiding place, she watched him approach. As he drew close, the sulphurous light was so bright that she could recognize his black leather boots as the same pair that she had studied from beneath the guest room bed a couple of hours before. She turned her head to follow him as he went around the back of the motorhome to the starboard side, where he stopped at one of the pumps. The black top was cold against her thighs, belly, and breasts. It leached the body heat out of her through jeans and cotton sweater, and she began to shiver. She listened as the killer disengaged the hose spout from the nozzle boot, opened the fuel port on the side of the motorhome, and removed the gas and removed the tank cap. She figured it would take a few minutes to fill the behemoth, so she began to ease out of her hiding place even as she heard the spout thunk into the tank. Still flat at ground level, she suddenly saw the butcher knife out on the blacktop, 10 feet from the front bumper. The yellow light glimmered along the cutting edge. Even as she was sliding into the open, however, before she could push to her feet, she heard boot heels on blacktop. She glanced back under the motorhome and saw that the killer evidently had fixed the nozzle trigger in place with the regulator clip because he was on the move again. Frantically and as silently as possible, she retreated beneath the vehicle once more. She could hear gasoline sloshing into the fuel tank. The killer walked forward along the starboard side, around the front to the driver's door, but he didn't open the door. He paused, very still. Then he walked to the butcher knife, stooped, and picked it up. China held her breath, though it seemed impossible that the killer could intuit the meaning of the knife. He'd never seen it before. He couldn't know that it had come from a Templeton house. Although it was indisputably odd to find a butcher knife lying on a service station approach lane, it might have fallen out of any vehicle that had passed through. With the knife, he returned to the motorhome and climbed inside, leaving the driver's door open behind him. Over China's head, the footsteps on the steel floor were as hollow as voodoo drums. As best she could tell, he stopped in the dining area. Vess isn't prone to see omens and portents everywhere he looks. A single hawk flying across the face of the full moon, glimpsed at midnight, will not fill him with expectations of either disaster or good fortune. A black cat crossing his path, a mirror shattering while his reflection is captured in it. A news story about the birth of a two-headed calf. None of these things will rattle him. He is convinced that he makes his own fate, and that spiritual transcendence, if such a thing can happen, ensues merely from one's acting boldly and living with intensity. Nevertheless, the large butcher knife makes him wonder. It has a totemic quality, an almost magical aura. He carefully places it on the counter in the kitchen where the light lays a wet sheen along the weapon's cutting edge. When he picked it off the blacktop, the blade had been cold, but the handle had been vaguely warm, as if with the anticipatory heat of his grip. Eventually, he will experiment with his strangely discarded blade to determine if anything special happens when he cuts someone with it. At the moment, however, it doesn't provide him with the advantage that he needs for the work at hand. He has a Heckler & Koch P7 snug in the right-hand pocket of his raincoat, but he doesn't feel that even it is adequate to the situation. The two lads behind the cashier's counter are not in the war zone of a big city 7-Eleven market, but they are smart enough to take precautions. Not even Beverly Hills and Bel Air, peopled by wealthy actors and retired football stars, are any longer safe at night, either for or from their citizens. These fellows will have a firearm for self-protection and will know how to use it. Dealing with them will require an intimidating weapon with formidable stopping power. He opens a cabinet to the left of the oven. A Mossberg short-barreled pistol-grip pump-action 12-gauge shotgun is mounted in a pair of spring clamps on the shelf. He pops it loose of the clamps and lays it on the countertop. The magazine tube of the 12-gauge is already loaded. Although he doesn't belong to the American Automobile Association, Edgeler Vess is otherwise always prepared for any eventuality when he travels. In the cabinet is a box of shotgun shells, open for easy access. He takes a few and puts them on the counter next to the Mossberg, though he's not likely to need them. He quickly unbuttons the raincoat but doesn't take it off. He transfers the pistol from his right-hand exterior pocket to an interior right-hand breast pocket in the lining. This is also where he places the spare shells. From a kitchen drawer, he withdraws a compact Polaroid camera. He tucks it into the pocket from which he just removed the Heckler & Koch P7. From his wallet, he removes the trim Polaroid snapshot of his special girl, Ariel, and he slips it into the same pocket that contains the camera. With his 7-inch switchblade, which is tacky from all the work for which it was used at the Templeton house, he slashes the lining of the left coat pocket. Then he rips away these tattered fragments of fabric. Now, if he were to drop coins into this pocket, they would fall straight to the floor. He puts the shotgun under his open coat and holds it with his left hand through the ruined pocket. The concealment is effective. He does not believe that he looks at all suspicious. He quickly paces back to the bedroom, then forward, practicing his walk. He is able to move freely without banging the shotgun against his legs. After all, he can draw upon the nimbleness and the grace of the spider from the Templeton house. Although he doesn't care what damage he does to the birthmark cashier with the ashen eyes, he'll have to be careful not to destroy the face of the young Asian gentleman. He must have good photographs for Arya. Overhead, the killer seemed to be occupied in the dining area. The floor creaked under him as he shifted his weight. Unless he had drawn open the curtains, he couldn't see outside from where he was. With luck, China could make a break for freedom. She considered remaining under the vehicle, letting him tank up and drive away, and only then going inside to call the police. But he had found the butcher knife. He would be thinking about it, though she could see no way that he could grasp the significance of the knife. By now, she had an almost superstitious dread of him and was irrationally convinced that he would find her if she remained where she was. She crawled out from under the motorhome, rose into a crouch, glanced at the open door, and then stepped back and looked up. And she stepped back. And then looked back and up at the windows along the side. The curtains were closed. Emboldened, she got to her feet, crossed to the inner service island, and stepped between the pumps. She glanced back, but the killer remained inside the vehicle. She went out of the night into bright fluorescent light and the twang of country music. 2 employees were behind the counter on the right, and she intended to say call the police, but then she glanced through the glass door that had just closed behind her, and she saw the killer getting out of the motorhome and coming toward the store, even though he hadn't finished filling the fuel tank. He was looking down. He hadn't seen her. She moved away from the door. The 2 men stared at her expectantly. If she told them to call the police, they would want to know why. And there was no time for discussion, not even enough time for the telephone call. Instead, she said, "Please don't let him know I'm here," and before they could reply, she walked away from them, along an aisle with goods shelved 6 feet high on both sides, to the far end of the store. As she stepped out of the aisle to hide at the end of a row of display cases, China heard the door open and the killer enter. A growl of wind came with him, and then the door swung shut. The red-headed cashier and the young Asian gentleman with the liquid night eyes are staring at him strangely, as if they know something they shouldn't, and he almost pulls the shotgun from under his coat the moment that he walks through the door, almost blows them away without preamble, but he tells himself that he's misreading them, that they're merely intrigued by him because he is, after all, a striking figure. Often people sense his exceptional power and are aware that he lives a larger life than they do. He is a popular man at parties, and women are frequently attracted to him. These men are merely drawn to him, as are so many others. Besides, if he whacks them immediately without a word, he'll be denying himself the pleasure of foreplay. Alan Jackson is no longer singing on the radio, and cocking one ear appreciatively, Vess says, "Man, I like that Emmylou Harris, don't you? Was there ever anyone who could sing this stuff so it got to you that way?" "She's good," said the redhead. Previously he was outgoing. Now he seems reserved. The Asian says nothing inscrutable in this Zen temple of Twinkies, Hershey bars, beer nuts, snack crackers, and Doritos. "I love a song about home fires and family," Vess says. "You on vacation?" asked the redhead. "Hell, friend, I'm always on vacation." "Too young to be retired." "I mean," says Vess, "life itself is a vacation if you look at it the right way. Been doing some hunting." "Around these parts? What game's in season?" the redhead asks. The Asian remains silent but attentive. He takes a Slim Jim sausage off the display rack and skins open the plastic wrapper without letting his gaze flicker from Bess. They don't suspect for a second that they're both going to be dead in a minute, and their cow-stupid lack of awareness delights Bess. It is quite funny, really, how dramatically their eyes will widen in the instant that the shotgun roars. Instead of answering the cashier's question, Bess says, "Are you a hunter?" "Fishing's my sport," the redhead says. "Never cared for it," says Bess. "Great way to get in touch with nature, little boat on the lake, peaceful water." Bess shakes his head. "You can't see anything in their eyes." The redhead blinks, confused. "In whose eyes? I mean, they're just fish. They have these flat, glassy eyes. Jesus." "Well, I never said they're pretty, but nothing tastes better than your own caught salmon or a mess of trout." Edgeler Vest listens to the music for a moment, letting the two men watch him. The song genuinely affects him. He feels the piercing loneliness of the road, the longing of a lover far from home. He's a sensitive man. The Asian bites off a piece of the Slim Jim. He chews daintily, his jaw muscles hardly moving. Vest decides he will take the unfinished sausage back to Ariel. She can put her mouth where the Asian had his. This intimacy with the beautiful young man will be Vest's gift to the girl. He says, "Sure will be glad to get home to my Ariel. Isn't that a pretty name?" "Sure is," said the redhead. "Fits her, too." "She the missus?" asked the redhead. His friendliness is not as natural as when Vest spoke with him about turning on pump number 7. He is definitely uncomfortable and trying not to show it. Time to startle them, see how they react. Will either of them begin to realize just how much trouble is coming? Nope, Vest says, no ball and chain for me. Maybe one day. Anyway, Ariel's only 16, not ready yet. They are not sure what to say. 16 is half his age. 16 is still a child. Jailbait. The risk he's taking is enormous and titillating. Another customer might pull off the highway at any moment, raising the stakes. "Prettiest thing you'll ever see this side of paradise," says Vest, and he licks his lips. Ariel, I mean. He takes the Polaroid snapshot from his coat pocket and drops it onto the counter. The clerks stare at it. "She's pure angel," says Vest. "Porcelain skin, breathtaking. Makes your scrotum twang like a bass fiddle." With barely disguised distaste, the cashier looks at the pump monitor board to the left of the cash register and says, "Your $60 just finished going into the tank." Vest says, "Don't get me wrong, I never touched her that way. She's been locked in the basement the past year, where I can look at her anytime I want to, waiting for my little daughter ripen, get just a little sweeter." As glassy-eyed as fish, they gaze at him. He relishes their expressions. Then he smiles, laughs, and said, "Hey, had you going there, didn't I?" Neither man smiles back at him, and the redhead says tightly, "You still going to make some other purchases, or do you just want your change?" Vest puts on his most sincere face. He can almost manage a blush. "Listen, sorry if I offended. I'm a joker. Can't help putting people on." "Well," says the redhead, "I have a 16-year-old daughter, so I don't see what's funny." Speaking to the Asian, Vest says, "When I go hunting, I take trophies. Like a matador gets the bull's tail and ears. Sometimes it's just a picture. Gifts for Ariel. She'll really like you." As he speaks, he raises the Mossberg, draped with the raincoat as if with black funeral bunting, seizes it in both hands, blows the red-headed cashier off his stool, and pumps another shell into the breech. The Asian, oh, how his eyes widen. The expression in them is like nothing ever to be seen in the eyes of fish. Even as the redhead crashes to the floor, this young Asian gentleman with the fabulous eyes has one hand under the counter, going for a weapon. Vest says, "Don't, or I'll shove the bullets up your ass." But the Asian brings up the revolver anyway, a Smith & Wesson .38 Chief Special. So Vest thrusts the shotgun across the counter and fires point blank at his chest, loath to mess up that perfect face. The young man is airborne off the stool, the revolver spinning from his hand even before he has a chance to squeeze off one round. The redhead is screaming. Vest walks to the gate in the counter and passes through to the work area. The red-headed cashier with the 16-year-old daughter waiting at home is curled as if imitating the fetus-like pink birthmark on his forehead, hugging himself, pulling himself together. On the radio, Garth Brooks sings Thunder Rolls. Now the cashier is screaming and crying at the same time. The screams reverberate in the plate glass windows, and the echo of the shotgun still roars in Bess's ears. And a new customer could walk into the store at any second. The moment is achingly intense. One more round finishes the cashier. The Asian is unconscious and going fast. Happily, his face is unmarked. Like a pilgrim genuflecting before a shrine, Bess drops onto one knee as a final gasp rattles from the dying young man. A sound like the brittle flutter of insect wings. He leans close to inhale the other's exhalation, breathes deeply. Now, small measures of the Asian's grace and beauty are a part of him, conveyed on the scent of the Slim Jim. The Brooks song is followed by that old Johnny Cash number, Boy Named Sue, which is silly enough to spoil the mood. Bess turns off the radio. As he reloads, he surveys the area behind the counter and spots a row of wall switches. They are labeled with the locations of the lights that they control. He shuts down all the exterior lighting, including the open 24 hours of red neon on the roof. When he also switches off the fluorescent ceiling panels, the store is not plunged into total darkness. The display lights in the long row of coolers glow eerily behind the insulated glass doors. A lighted clock advertising Coors beer hangs on one wall, and at the corner, a gooseneck lamp illuminates the papers on which the Asian gentleman was working. Nevertheless, the shadows are deep and the place appears to be closed. It's unlikely that a customer will pull in from the highway. My phone battery is dying down, so pick up this chapter starting at the beginning of page 106 after I charge my phone.